What's up guys, Luke here from Luke's Points and Miles. And if you have been following the channel, you know that in 2024, I'm going to be making some changes as far as the cards I'm using and my basic strategy. While this video isn't a strategy video, that one will be out soon, very soon. But this video does have something to do with which cards I may be using. See, right now I'm sitting at well over 30 cards before I start cutting back, and I'm not likely to be approved for many new ones this year. I really need to lay off the applications and do a bit of gardening, well, right after this one. See, I applied for and was approved for the Capital One Saver One, completing the YouTube famous Capital One Duo. In this video, I'll review the card, and afterwards I'll talk about why it could be a good fit for me and why it's a better card for some than some of its alternatives. If that sounds good, sit down and get comfortable, consider subscribing, and slap the like button for that YouTube algorithm, and I will get right to it. Just a little background on my relationship with Capital One. I've been a Capital One customer since 2009 or so, and the Venture Rewards card was my first rewards card. Back in those days, I remember putting between $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year on the card and redeeming all the rewards for Amazon gift cards. Awesome. I didn't travel back then, but the point is, I've been with Capital One for a long time, and I've always kind of enjoyed their cards. Heck, I bought a van on a Capital One Venture One. The van was like $4,000, and it was for tailgating down in Cincinnati. I still can't believe they let me buy it with a credit card, but I really like that van. In any case, before applying for this card, I was holding the Capital One Venture X and a Capital One Venture One card that is just kind of sitting there waiting for them to let me change it to something I'll use. So one day I decided to play with the Capital One pre-approval tool just to see if I would be able to hold a third Capital One card. Now, this is after I was declined for a Capital One business card. I have a lot of newer accounts and tons of inquiries, so I'm not looking great on paper, if you know what I mean. But using the tool, Capital One pre-approved me for the Saver One. I applied, was approved, so there isn't a two-card rule with Capital One. Let's talk about the card for the very few of you that aren't familiar with it, because it's been pretty popular this year on YouTube. It's essentially a cash back card, but folks have now learned that with Capital One, if you hold a mile earning card like the Venture or Venture X, you can transfer the cash back into miles, making them quite a bit more valuable for travelers. Guys, if you want more information about these cards, really any other card, check out my super cool organized card link in the description below. Using that link is the best way to support my channel, and if you used the link in the past, I want to thank you. Does the Saver One card have a bonus? Sure does. Capital One breaks up their cards in a really weird way, so folks with lower credit scores only qualify for the higher interest rate and no bonus version of the card. But if you qualify for the Saver One rewards with the bonus is a pretty easy 200 bucks or 20,000 miles for spending just $500 on the card, which most folks can do pretty easy, especially considering the bonus categories on this card. This card earns 3%, which I will just refer to as 3 times on the following categories: groceries, dining, entertainment, and popular streaming services, and times 1 on everything else. There are a couple other categories that will have bonuses that we'll talk about in a moment. All of this with no annual fee. When you mention the phrase Capital One Duo, the wheels automatically start turning, and it's easy to realize that this is a great companion to the Venture X, and this combo has been talked about a lot this year, and for good reason. For no annual fee, the card has some great earning potential, but let's check out the other benefits that make this card worth taking a look at. The card will earn 10 times on Uber and Uber Eats, plus you get the monthly membership fee paid for an Uber One membership until November 2024. Wow, a credit that I don't really have to use, but it's nice to have the option. That's refreshing. You'll get 8 times back on Capital One Entertainment, so if you're a Swiftie like me, that could come in handy. Capital One cards don't have foreign transaction fees, so if you're like me and your goal is to stamp that passport as many times as possible, then it is important, and it goes along with the worldwide acceptance of MasterCard. Now, I don't have the card in hand just yet, but from what I understand, mine will be a MasterCard, and that's also important because I fly American Airlines, and I use the AA Simply Miles feature. The card has some other benefits such as extended warranty and travel protections, but as its role is not a travel card, I'm not going to go too much into that. This card will be used in the bonus categories, and by that I mean mostly dining and groceries in my case. So who is the card for, and why would I be getting it? Well, here's the hard truth, guys. The Capital One Duo is a great everyman setup that's easy to use and makes sense for a large number of people. But sticking just with the Saver One, let's talk about the elephant in the room. There aren't a ton of food cards on the market that can earn transferable currencies and earn at grocery stores and dining. Our obvious comparison here is going to be the American Express Gold Card, which is one of the all-time greats for sure. So how could the Saver One compare to the Gold? It's 4 times versus 3 times on the 2 larger categories most of us spend on. The gap only grows the more we spend, but there are 2 distinct advantages the Saver One will have, and the first is obvious. It's free. Having no annual fee leaves no justification and no mitigation, and I will be brutally honest, no credits that some of us have to force ourselves to use. It's just a great, convenient card for our everyday spend. There is another advantage I'll mention before I talk about how it may not measure up to the American Express food card. We've talked about how Capital One cards don't have foreign transaction fees, and that is also true with the Gold Card. However, most of us have had at least some difficulty using our American Express cards outside the US. Me personally, I don't even try to use Amex at restaurants because I don't want to hear them ask me to use something else. It happens enough, I don't even try. So better worldwide acceptance is a nice perk. Now, it's definitely not a slam dunk. On top of the fact that the Gold Card just flat out earns everything, if you use the credits, you can really take that effective annual fee down to a very minuscule $10 in theory. So if you're putting $20,000, $30,000 on the food card in a year, that difference could look something like 90,000 points to 120,000 points in this extreme example. And we have to mention that most folks will likely consider Capital One transfer partners at least somewhat inferior to what Amex offers. That is debatable because Capital One does have Turkish, Virgin, Avianca, Flying Blue, and more, so they have the hitters. And don't forget Aeroplan. I don't think most of us are missing out if we have a ton of Capital One miles. At least I won't be. If we're comparing competitors, we also have to mention the City Premier card, which is somewhat similar in that the Premier will earn City Thank You points at 3 times for dining, groceries, and gas. The City Premier card is a hitter, but it also has a $95 annual fee that, in my opinion, you just can't get rid of. And this is just my opinion, but if it's a head-to-head competition between the Premier and the Saver One, then it's a very close competition. However, when you add in the synergistic effects of holding the Capital One Venture X, then I think the Saver One pulls away pretty quickly. Again, just my opinion. So who is the Saver One for? I think it's a good standalone card for someone who wants to earn cash back, but I think when it's paired with the Venture X, both cards become better. Sort of like a 2 + 2 = 5 type scenario. I think the card works for the reasons stated earlier, and I think it could be a great addition to some wallets. Could it replace a die-hard Amex fan's Gold Card? Well, maybe. We shall see. With no annual fee, it's definitely one of the more underrated cards out there right now. And even though some predict Capital One to devalue the Venture X in the future, I think the overall trajectory of Capital One is positive. And I'm excited to see how I can take advantage of this card in the future as it competes against the Amex Gold and the City Premier. Just a reminder, guys, if you want even more information about these cards, check out my card link in the description below. I will be doing some follow-up videos about Capital One and the Saver One in the near future, so stay tuned. And if you stayed around all the way to the end, I thank you and I appreciate every single one of you.